Global axis orientation of STAAD looks something like this. By default, y-axis represents the vertical direction, but in several other software, different axis orientation is followed. Like in any CAD software, Z is the vertical axis, not Y. If we try to import any model from this software to STAAD as a DXF file, then the imported structure orientation will be wrong, and we need to manually adjust this in STAAD. There is a conventional method to fix this using SetZUp command, but it is not recommended due to several issues. Do you know what are the problems with SetZUp configuration and how to import any DXF file in STAAD without changing the default axis orientation? Hi, I am Surajit Ghosh, and in this video, I will discuss about few methods of changing the axis orientation of STAAD and how to import any model from a DXF file generated in other software, whether that follows YUp or ZUp configuration. Consider this model. It's a G+4 story building. Centerline of the beam and column are generated in MicroStation for the entire structure. There are several other layers, but I have switched up those information. I am only interested about the structural component. We can easily use this geometry data in STAAD for analysis and design. To import this in STAAD, we need to save the model as a DXF file. But there is one problem. In MicroStation, Z is the vertical axis, not Y. Same axis orientation is followed in AutoCAD. If we import this model directly in STAAD, then the structure orientation will be incorrect. Also, we cannot rotate the model here as several other information are linked with this file. Let's find out what happens when we import this model in a blank STAAD file. Import option is available under the File menu. From here, we can import any 2D or 3D DXF file. During import, we can change the axis orientation. If the DXF is generated with Y as vertical axis, then we can use YUp or no change option. For this model, Z is the vertical axis, and if we select this option, program internally rotates the structure to align it properly. For now, I am going to skip this. I want to check how the model is imported with default option. See? Geometry of the model is imported correctly, but its orientation is wrong, along Z-axis, which is quite obvious. We need to fix this problem and set this direction as vertical axis. There are two approaches. Either we can rotate the structure about x-axis with YUp configuration, or we can set the z-axis as vertical direction using SetZUp command. This can be done using the ZUp option during file import. If we skip this, then also we can change this from the input editor. After the first command line, add SetZUp command. This will change the global axis orientation to Z as vertical axis. Now the structure looks fine. By the way, we have modified the global axis only for this model. No other STAAD model is affected with this. There is another option using which we can change the default global axis orientation of all STAAD model. From the configuration setting, change the global axis to ZUp. Though this method is easy, still ZUp orientation is not suggested. STAAD analysis engine is developed considering Y as the vertical axis, and there are several commands which does not work with ZUp configuration. For example, we cannot specify an area load if ZUp command is used in the model. Similarly, flow diaphragm command works only if y-axis is vertical. This does not work with ZUp, and if we specify any Z level as height, program is unable to determine the correct floor level. After analysis, a warning is reported in the output, clearly mentioning the limitation of this ZUp configuration. Only few are mentioned here. There are several other commands. So if we use SetZUp command, it is not possible to use several important features of STAAD. Also, it is very hard to interpret the analysis and design result. That's why it is not recommended to use this configuration. There are few other options to fix this problem without changing the axis orientation. Consider the original model with incorrect orientation without any Z-up command. To fix this, we can rotate the structure about x-axis in this direction, right? We can achieve this using a hidden command of STAAD, perform rotation. This command is not available in the UI, and we need to add this from the input editor. Just after the member incidence, we can add perform rotation. We need to define the axis about which the structure will rotate, in this case about x-axis, and finally the angle of rotation, which is 90 degree. As the rotation is in the anti-clockwise direction about positive x-axis, we need to define the angle as -90. That's all. Location and syntax of this command is very important. If we add this command in wrong place or provide incorrect syntax, it will not work. It works for any axis and angle. Only problem, each time when we open the model or change anything in the input editor, a warning is reported about this command. We can ignore this. It's just a junk message. Program does not remove this command. This will solve the orientation problem, and now the structure is properly aligned with default axis orientation. We can use any command, including floor diaphragm, without any problem. Easy, right? We can also manually rotate the structure. Just select the entire model. Use the rotate option. Rotation angle is 90 degree about x-axis. We can select any two nodes to define the axis of rotation. Either provide the node number or coordinate. Also, we can select the nodes from the UI using this option. It is easier. We don't want to retain the original structure, so use the move option. Now the structure orientation is perfect. I prefer the perform rotation command rather than this approach. There are lots of manual effort. Also, if the nodes are not present to define the axis of rotation, then we need to add those nodes. In summary, we can import any model from a DXF file without changing the global axis orientation. Once the model is imported, simply review the alignment. If required, calculate the rotation angle and direction. Accordingly, add the perform rotation command in the input editor or use rotate option from the UI to modify the structure orientation. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.